Welcome back to Season 2 of Illuminating Leadership. This season, we'll explore how leaders and employees can best navigate the new workplace, with specific emphasis on how culture impacts engagement. I'm your host and leadership development coach, Beth Johnson, and I'm so glad you're here. If you like what you hear today, head over to patreon.com at Illuminating Leadership. Remember, that's Lumen with an E. And subscribe for exclusive coaching benefits and rewards that you won't find on my other platforms. Things like live Q&As, ad-free content, monthly group coaching, and much more. I hope to see you there. And now, on with the show. Hey guys, welcome back to Illuminating Leadership. I am so tickled to have this guest on with me today, a dear friend and certainly a mentor, and a man of many talents. Breakthrough coach, Greg Long. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you, Beth. Welcome.
It's so good to have you here. Now, for everybody online here listening, a quick intro to Greg. In 2007, he closed his own premier home building business to pursue a life making a difference for others. Now, today, Greg works with High Performing Coach and is a highly sought after business training and development specialist. But most importantly of all, Greg has committed to seeing that all young people can live a life free from limitation and fear. And when I read that, I went, I wish I'd have had Greg when I was 12, right? So let's get right into it, Greg. What's the story behind that rather large career transition?
Yeah, thank you, Beth. I mean, listen, one of the things that I think a lot of people, they wake up one day and they go, how did I end up doing this? It was like I have a career by default. It wasn't planned. I didn't wake up one morning inspired about building houses. It was a survival mechanism that I created along the way where I became a carpenter to survive and provide, not because I was inspired. And then all of a sudden people wanted, at some point, somebody said, hey, Greg, will you build my addition on my house? And I said, yes. And then before you know it, I had 20 some carpenters or 20 some employees, and we were doing anywhere from $3.5 to $5 million of work, and it turned into something that I really didn't enjoy. I loved walking up to a house with a pile of lumber on the front yard, and then leaving a week later with a house on the front yard. That was inspiring, but it wasn't inspiring when I had to manage all the things that were available inside of building a business. I couldn't leave the office. I was writing contracts and all the things that had to happen in the background, which I didn't enjoy at all. So when the economy started to drop in 2007 and 8, it wasn't a tragedy to me.
Right.
It was a tragedy to a lot of people. And don't get me wrong. I mean, it was very uncomfortable because my life was designed based on the income I produced from a building company. And now that all of that was gone, I'm decorating my backyard for my daughter's graduation, and they're towing cars out of my driveway. So it was a transition that was very, very uncomfortable. But when I just stood there for a minute and I go, wait a minute, this is kind of what I've been asking for a couple of years. How do I exit this? And how do I leave what I don't love? And so the economy kind of took care of that.
Well, that was going to be my question. How did you do it? Because even though the economy was part and parcel of it, right? You had to, in your own mind, adjust. You had to work your family through that change because, bringing in 5 million in your company to going out to inspire people, right? Did that scare the family? Did it scare you? How did you adapt? How did you work through that?
Yeah, it scared everybody. I'd like to say we did it calmly, but I knew, and more so my wife knew, that I would reinvent myself, and she trusted that would happen. And so I did some property management for a while. I did some other things for a while, just to kind of find out which direction I wanted to go. And then I remember thinking, I said, listen, I had my first opportunity to be a coach when I was in 1999. That's when I had a coach. I did Dale Carnegie. I did some other courses. I did a lot of things to really discover who Greg was along the way. And I've been doing that for 10, 11, 12 years. And so I had quite a wealth of information. I became a seminar leader for Landmark. I became an introduction leader for Landmark. So I had 10 to 12, 14 years of training that I was looking to transform Greg, because Greg didn't want to become the human being he was in his 20s and 30s.
Who
So I
was
said,
the, oh, go ahead.
well, that's when I said, well, why don't I take this wealth of training and give it to others where it has some value?
What did you discover about the Greg you were and the Greg you became?
Well, you know, I was in a lot of trouble along the way. When I was 12 years old, my parents put me in a boys' home because I was incorrigible. I had my first drink at 13. I was a heroin addict by the time I was 17. I lived on the streets for a couple of years in my 20s. I didn't get sober till I was 36.
Wow.
I mean, it was horrific, and listen, I'm looking back, people say, well, that was tragic. No, it wasn't. It was my life. I didn't know any different.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's no drama involved, and that's who I was. Right. And then when I got sober, I made some big mistakes when I got sober and got clean. And then that's when I sought out help and sought out finding a way not to repeat that. And that's when I went on my journey of self-improvement, the journey of how can I not repeat the past.
Well,
And so, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, you said it when we started that you really found yourself just kind of falling into things to, I think you said, survive and provide, which
That's
is what
right.
so many people do. And then add on to that what you had experienced or maybe were still experiencing. Um, what inside you, or did a human being guide you to getting the help? Because so many of us feel that way and feel stuck, but don't know what to do.
Yeah. Well, I think, listen, it's hard to say, but I think that it was a benefit that I was an alcoholic and an addict.
How so?
Well, because I was put in front of people who believed in me.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I walked in and went and found them. I had no other choice. I was at gutter level, and it was either find somebody to help me out of the gutter who were inspiring to help me move forward. It wasn't like, okay, I woke up one morning and said, I'm going to go find some help. No, it wasn't that smooth, right? So I benefited out of the fact that I had the past that I had because it pushed me into the direction that I wanted to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I said, most of it was survival inside of getting a job and a career and building a company and all that other stuff. It was because I was afraid of being nothing again. But when you're out there creating something fearful of being nothing again, it's not very inspiring. It's more like treading water. At some point, you're not going to want to tread water anymore. You're going to be exhausted.
And then you're
And
going to
so
feel like you're drowning.
you feel exactly like you're drowning
Mm-hmm.
and surrounded by a life where everybody goes, wow, that's a pretty cool life. I wish I had that one. And you're over there treading water and you're drowning. And so
Exactly.
when it was gone, I said, well, what would I love to do? What I really love to do, and it was really when I got, because I've been involved at that time. Now I've been involved in Landmark for 10 years when that happened. I've been involved with a program called Reaching Higher that was in 50 some schools around our area, where we're providing leadership courses for kids, that it used to be a leadership for high risk kids. And then we realized all kids are high risk. So we changed the platform and called it a leadership course instead of a course for high risk kids, because we realized that once you call a kid high risk, their parents don't want to deal with it.
And they believe themselves to be high risk and they start to label themselves, right? If you,
Hey,
I think I see the wisdom in that call, give every kid a chance to excel, grow, become a leader, either where they sit or to pursue, that
that's
in a
exactly
career.
right.
That's
That's exactly right.
amazing. How many
Yeah,
years did you do that?
I'm still doing it.
You
Started,
are.
yeah, the person who led my Dale Carnegie class is the one who designed the Reaching Higher course. And she said, Greg, and this is everybody. This is one of the most important things I learned to want. I only showed up in her listening.
Say that again.
I only showed up in her listening. She said, in listening and seeing who I was, she said, Greg, you can be a mentor and a facilitator for this course. Now, I didn't think that. Not a chance. So I started to trust and believe what she could see. And then listening and her speaking and what she said to me, I trusted and I became what she said, not what I thought I could do.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, I mean, I really did. I started to lead and I was a mentor and I started training the facilitators and I led the course and I spoke for all these classes because she said I could do it, not because I thought I could.
Well, when I became a coach, I was coached myself, obviously, and you were one of those people. But one of my mentors actually guided me through that, who helped me understand that we have a blind spot and we can't see what others see in us at times because we are so connected to our subconscious and what that subconscious has told us over the years to believe about ourselves. And I, I'm smiling because I can imagine that transition and how that felt to you, both terrifying and like, well, she's saying it with conviction,
Yeah,
and I feel like I want something different. And I say that out loud because I want our listeners to understand that you are not alone when you feel like I'm stuck, I'm drowning, I don't know who I am, what it is I can do. But maybe others, that support system in your life, like you said, your wife earlier, knew who you
yeah,
were, that you could reinvent yourself. That support system is critically important. And for those who think they don't have it, look harder
yeah.
because I guarantee you do, right, Greg?
Well, my mentor told me he was my sponsor in recovery, right? He was
Mm-hmm.
been around forever. I think he was 80 years old at the time. He says, Greg, I want you to go do that Dale Carnegie class because I'm too old to go do it. And then just come back and tell me what's happening.
That's
So
awesome.
he actually sent me on a mission to fill him in. And I believed him that I was just going there to fill him in. And then I got the whole course by participating because I
Right?
didn't want to let him down.
Oh, the wisdom of 80 years old, right? The
I
things we've
know it was
learned.
really great. I thought I was helping this old man out who, needed help.
Well, and then that brings us to today, right? Where you
Yeah.
have transitioned so many things in your life. And I mentioned earlier that you are a breakthrough coach. And for those who don't understand what that is, can you deep dive into that for us? Tell us why it's important.
Yeah. Well, listen, for all of us, we run across limitations. Well, I shouldn't say that. Not everybody runs across limitations because not everybody is going anywhere.
Mm,
So if you're not going anywhere, you'll probably never, or if you don't have a goal, if you don't have you probably never run across limitations because it's a human condition to design a life that's safe. So a lot of us design lives that are safe that have no future. And then I wake up bored and depressed and wondering why life isn't giving me anything. Well, I just stopped saying how life was going to go along the way. But I don't know when, I don't know why, I don't know how I did that. So when I reach out and I say, okay, I'm all done, and I have a coach, I hire a coach can see when I stopped, when I made a decision to give away my power, or when I said it, life is too scary out there. I don't know. I said it's not like I said it out loud.
right.
Something happened to me. And in that moment, I said something. The world's not safe. I said, it's not safe out there. It's dangerous, or whatever I said. And then I stopped moving forward. Now, even if I'm a performer in life and I've produced a lot, there's something I bump up against that says the same thing. This is as far as I can go. Right. I just discovered something for myself. See, I'm a people pleaser, right?
Hmm.
So I built my whole building company up making sure people are happy. It wasn't because I was a world best craftsman or I couldn't whittle a column out of a piece of wood or anything like that. I wasn't one of those guys. I was somebody that people liked and wanted me to participate in building their dreams. I built a whole building company out of it, right? But the moment I can't produce a result being nice, I quit.
Really?
Yeah, of course, because my winning formula won't let me get to here.
Hmm.
Being nice will only take me to here. And I go, gosh, how come I can't get past this? Well, whenever I'm out there trying to produce results by being nice instead of standing for and being committed to something and really dealing with all the obstructions that come in the way, I can't bump through it to here. So at this point, I need a coach. What do you see? What do
And
you
that's
see?
where people call you.
That's where people call me.
Now, you work primarily with high level leaders, executives, C suite, correct?
Well, it's really kind of expanded because I work with the families too. I mean, it's all the same,
Ah, tell us.
you
I
know?
think I know where you're going, but tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, listen, if somebody C-suite executive calls me because they've hit this roadblock,
Hmm.
usually they've taken their eye off of what they've already given their word to. See, a long time ago, before they became the C-suite executive, they gave their word to their family. They declared to the world, I promise to love, honor, and cherish. I promise to provide. I promise to do this. And then I get focused on my creating something very successful over here, and I take my eye off of what I gave my word to, and they wonder why there's a collapse inside of here, because I don't believe that you can build a company from here to here when it's done with a lack of integrity.
No, yeah, I don't believe you can either.
I mean, people do it, you can get there, but you're exhausted, tired, broken, sick, all those things. The hospital's full of people that produce results inside of
Hmm.
no integrity, but the effect it has on your body and your toll and your time and all the things that come up.
Not to mention you're breaking other people as you go,
Now,
right? Within the
and it's not
workplace or
like we
within
do
the
it
family.
intentionally. They're not
Right.
vicious people. They just take their eye off of what they said they were committed to.
I remember when I first asked you about this because I was so intrigued about the what I will say the hard-headed CEO, which is who I've bumped up against my entire career. And what did it, excuse me, what is the first question that you ask them?
Well, in a lot of cases, the first question is, are you cheating on your spouse?
And that shocked me. So tell me why you
Well,
said
I'm
that.
not the morality police. I really don't care if you're doing that or not. It's not I'm not I just need to know who I'm dealing with,
Mm.
right? Because I'm dealing with somebody that has a weak relationship with their word and a lack of integrity. Okay, good. Let's go to work, right? You ready to take the coaching, right? And listen,
Right?
it's not what you think. It's not what we've created. And what I mean by cheating is if your spouse was looking over your shoulder, would your behavior be appropriate?
That's a great way to explain it. And it goes back to what you were saying. It is all about integrity. If you
Not
have
about morality. It's not about,
correct.
yeah.
So, what change do your clients see when they go through this type of coaching with you when they weren't even aware themselves? They look at their career and go, I've done great, much like you did in your own business, right? I've done great. I'm bringing in all this money. I've given employment to hundreds of people, but I'm so lost and unhappy and stuck and angry all the time. So when they go through this breakthrough coaching with you, I know there's several steps, obviously, and they have to be willing to do the work and to get really raw and real. When they do, what kind of changes can they expect?
What? Well, one of the things is they don't dread going to their job every day, or they
Mhm.
don't dread coming home. What's it like to walk in an environment that you've killed off? you know so
Mhm.
why would I want to run home? I've heard a lot of men say, well, I work 14, 15, 16 hours a day just to provide for my family. No, you don't. You're lying. You work 15, 16 hours a day because you get accolades, pats on the back, financial rewards. When you go home, you're dumb as a rock.
Yep.
I don't know how to be a husband, a father. I don't know how to navigate those things. No one says pat on the back, great job, dad, right? No. So I'm going to stay at work where I get all those things instead of go home.
Yep. Where I don't
So
have to come back to real life and empty the garbage and take care of,
and no one says thank you and says great job, and
exactly.
all the other stuff, right? So I start to take responsibility for, if I want those things that I get in the office everywhere in my life, then I have to start dealing with the foundation. I have to start dealing with restoring my integrity at home.
I personally discovered that when I finally left my corporate career, I was doing the same thing. I
Yeah,
was achieving and getting all the accolades, and then I was coming home to the husband saying, you're not present, you're not here enough, we don't spend time together anymore. And the more he said that, the more I stayed at work. And
that's right. That's right.
did you experience the same thing?
Well, mine's a little different because when I first started building my building company, or when I finally got sober and started functioning at some
Hmm.
level, I still didn't deal with the integrity of my being, right? I had no distinctions, no way to deal with it. So I woke up one morning early on and I looked at my wife and I go, oh, that's why I'm not happy. Right. And so I looked at her for a period of time. And when I gathered enough evidence that she was the problem, I walked out of the marriage. My kids were 4 and 6 years old. I divorced her. I said, she's the problem and I know it.
I didn't know
Yeah.
that, Greg.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Wow.
now fast forward 3.5 years down the road, I'm sitting in a rented house all by myself. I had just kicked out the last girlfriend because she was the problem.
Uh-huh.
Feeling pretty disgusted and lonely and tired and everything else. And I had this realization in a moment, it was a line in the sand for me. I mean, no kidding, it was a line in the sand. It was either face the destruction that I had caused in my past or pull a rifle out of the closet. I mean, really, that line in the sand. Because I had this moment where I got to see really clear that I'm the problem, and it wasn't pretty.
It never is.
I got to see that. I spent my whole life blaming others for the way I turned out. And if I wasn't happy, it was somebody else's fault. And I did that. I did that to my wife. I did that to my kids. I did that to everybody in my life. And so I made it through that night. I had no spiritual background or anything like that. But I remember I got down on my knees that night. I said, listen, if you get me through tonight, I promise to repair all the damage I've done. I promise. And it was the worst night of my life. It was miserable. But I ran to the AA hotline the next morning, and here sits this old man, the guy I told you about.
The 80-year-old, yep.
9 o'clock in the morning on New Year's Day, answering the phone to people who were having problems, And I went in there and I dumped my baggage. I said, listen, I'm an idiot. Really I'm a jerk. And he smiled and he leaned back and he goes, well, Greg, he says, the fact that you know that means you stand a chance.
I love that.
Yeah. And we went to work and I started to clean up my integrity with my family. I started to be the father I was supposed to be. I picked my kids up on time. I did all the things I was supposed to do. And after about 45 days, I had the courage. I asked Carol out for a date. And she said yes. And then she told me later on that the only reason she said yes because she wanted to know if I was getting high or drinking.
I can see that. And she
Yeah.
was pleasantly surprised.
She was surprised. So we dated for a while. And we ended up buying a house together. Now we weren't remarried, right? And because my commitment was that she had to go through whatever process she had to go through.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was angry and she was mad and she would do this and she would do that. And she would, and one day we're sitting in our new house and she's screaming at me for something. I don't know, a sock on the floor, whatever it was, right? And she caught her breath, just like I caught mine. And she says, you know something? I'm all done blaming you. I forgive you. And
I'm a crier, so I'm going to be crying right along with this.
I got down on my knee and I asked her to remarry me. And we got remarried 21 years ago. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is beautiful. And I would ask you, what would you say to the people who are connecting with this right now, that the story's resonating and they're thinking, my God, that's me. That's me. I'm about ready to draw the line in the sand. And we've heard from you and we know from experience, it is not easy and it does get hard and ugly and difficult to really look inside ourselves. And yes, you got remarried and you're planning your daughter's wedding, this weekend now and everything's good. But what's the primary piece of advice you'd give to people when they're drawing that line for making that hard decision?
There's only one. There's only one. That night, I sat down and took 100% responsibility. Period. I never have any expectations from Carol. If love is missing, I put it in. If resentment is there, I deal with myself. If there's something in the relationship that's not working, it's my fault. And I'm never left with a loss of power because I know who the problem is. Everyone started to deal with, if I don't feel good, if I don't feel energetic, if I don't feel alive, go look in the mirror, because there's the problem. It's not the person sitting next to you that loves you.
And it's just the opposite of what you think is going to happen when you make that admission. There is the weight that comes off the shoulders, and there is such freedom with it.
It's unbelievable the energy you have when you own. Now, listen, I'm not saying stay in an abusive relationship. That's
Right.
not you, right? I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying deal with, why am I not willing to say anything? Me. If I'm being abused in a relationship, why am I not to speak up, move, leave, take on? I've got to deal with what inside of me doesn't give me enough power to stand for something bigger than that.
I have a belief that behind all of that, there's fear. There's fear of something not being
Yeah.
cherished, loved, seen. What do you think?
Provided for, taken care of,
Yes.
comfort, all those things right there, right? But that's that fear of what if is the thing that keeps us all from being great. Yeah.
And until you push past the what if and just either believe or believe in someone else's belief in you, like you described earlier, you will continue to stay stuck and you'll continue to be held back. And it, like you said, it is you holding yourself back, correct?
Human condition. If I'm experiencing a loss of power, I got to run to somebody and find out, see what they see. What do you see that I can't see? Why don't I open my mouth? How come I don't speak up? How come I don't say how life is going to go? How come I surrender and give away my power? Why do I continue to do that?
And I love you. I love that you call that human condition, because it is, because every single solitary human that walks this planet experiences this at one time or another. It doesn't make you less than. It doesn't make you a bad human being. It doesn't make you any of the negative connotations that we want to put on ourselves. It just makes you human.
That's right. That's right. So one of the practices I put in place, and I still haven't conquered it, it's just a practice, is embracing being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because I know on the other side of my worst comfort was my biggest rewards. Sitting in that house that evening, deciding whether to go to the hotline in the morning or get a rifle out of the closet because it was too hard to deal with, was the most uncomfortable experience in my life. But it was real. But on the other side, there was a freedom. I knew exactly what to do. And no one had to tell me or give me instructions, because I went and asked for help. And all of a sudden, inside of asking for help, the door opened. There was something that I knew what to do. But I had to get through the uncomfortable first.
Now, yours was in that moment a very spiritual asking for help, and then taking these steps to contact the
Always take
AA line, right?
You got to get into action. Yeah.
What do you say to your leaders who say, listen, I've made it this far without help. I've done this on my own.
Yeah.
Greg, that's phooey.
Yeah, but no one's dealing with what it's costing them. See, I've done this on my own. I'm fine. There's no space for love in that. See, if I'm going to hold on to being right, there's no space for affinity and love and connection.
And is it true that every human, no matter how high up you are in, billionaires of the world, all the way down to those that are struggling the most, aren't they all looking for love and connection at one time or another?
But they don't know. I think a lot of times they don't know what they're looking for, but a lot of times it's self-love. A lot of the biggest, most successful people in the world end up in a hospital. Why? Because they sacrifice their bodies to create their success. So there's something missing there. They sacrifice their everything. Right? And I didn't know either. And listen, I keep thinking it's just me, but I found true happiness when I really got committed to serving and providing value outside of myself. And so every time I get caught up in, well, it's all about me. It's all about what's in it for me. It's all about me. I go right back to that gut wrenching, sick, lonely, depressed feeling because my world became all about me instead of how could I provide value out there. When I started speaking in the schools, the 20 years I had in my addicted life all of a sudden became valuable when I shared them to 14 and 15-year-olds who were starting to go into the place I went. My past had value. The only place it has value is when you're going to make a difference with it, not when you're going to be a victim of it.
Oh, I have missed you so much. You always have. I mean, you always have a great way of summarizing thought because as you were talking earlier about the problem is me, I need to look at me. I was thinking of someone else in my life that when they do that, they get then far too involved in me and I am bad and I am wrong and start to play victim. And I think you just answered it. It's take responsibility, look inside, be vulnerable, be willing to look at the hard and difficult things, but then also remember that it is through the serving of others, whatever that looks like for you, that
What
real
in the sharing.
and the sharing, yes, of your story and your
Listen, the greatest part of my wife and I rarely get in an argument about anything for the last 21 years because I know it's me. So I can start to argue and I just shut up because I know it's me. But part of cleaning up my messes along the way and developing a muscle inside of maintaining that level of outlook and integrity is many times I'd have to go to her. I said, listen, honey, I want you to know something. I just discovered something about myself. I'm a real asshole.
Maybe I need to start doing that. Just shorten it down to that one
Yeah,
statement.
instead of all the explanation, right? I don't know what I'm not dealing with, but for some reason I come home and I blame you for it. And I want you to know I'm not committed. I love you too much to keep doing that. Now, that I'm really present to what I'm doing in that moment only because I shared it out loud with the person I'm doing it to.
And it's authentic. It's not to get her on your side or
Oh
understand that
no,
you
not her, get her to forgive me. I apologize for the impact, and I said, "What's it like for you to have somebody like that, living with you in the house, where every time we start to create closeness, I go off or something."
Mhm.
Now I've started to build a defense against it showing up because I shared it out loud. So all the stuff that we hold in, well, they know that they know. No, they don't. No, they don't. How many people in relationships think the other person knows they love them? Well, how do you know that?
Because I
It's
said it. I told you 15 times this week.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's because you were raised in a household where no one shared it.
Interesting.
So I'm compensating for what I never got as a kid. So now I'm going to give it and say it to everybody. And after 3 years of that, I love you is like, hello, take the garbage out.
Yes.
Right. So I have to deal with, okay, good. How can if I'm committed to serving, providing value in my relationship, what's the next action I could take? What's the next action I could take? Well, maybe it's providing a cup of coffee on the vanity every morning when you get up without asking. There's an expression. That's what I could do. That's what's missing inside of, right? I start to express my love in actions instead of words. Because I love you all the time, every day, with no action behind it, just as like take the garbage out, right?
Exactly. It's just empty words.
It's just empty words, right? Because I'm compensating for something that I didn't get.
And what I heard in that as well is selfless. You get nothing from it. It's just providing a cup of coffee. You go do you. She gets up and then, and I can feel this with her, feels that you thought of her, that you love her, that you were important that she was important in your mind that morning before you took care of your business.
You know what I tell people in relationships too that are really fun? I said, I've got in my phone, I've got an occasion on my calendar at least 3-4 times over a couple months, right? Call your wife and tell her how important she is to you. They go, well, why do you have that in your calendar? Well, because I'm dumb as a rock. And if I'm committed to something, really committed to something, I don't miss the opportunity it goes into my calendar. If I'm crossing my fingers and hope it all works out, it doesn't go on my calendar.
And I'm going to say you're not dumb as a rock. I'm going to take it back to what you said. It's human condition, right?
Well,
We get caught up in our days. We get caught up in priorities. We think of them. We know we love them, but how do they know? Right? Like
well,
you said earlier.
do we love them or is it just convenient? See, if I love them, then I'm committed to loving them, then I'm going to take actions consistent with the person that does, not just hope it all works out. That's why 55% of divorce on the planet. I say I love you, but I take no action consistent with what I say.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to tell you that I am tickled to death that your business has expanded into relationships because, you know, who was it? Someone told us early on through High Performing Coach that what you deal with at home, you're dealing with at work. This thing that you're dealing with exists in every single part of your life, whether you know it or not, or want to admit it or not.
That's right.
So,
Right.
how do you, I mean, no disrespect to kids when I say this, because they are sometimes far smarter than we are. But how do you kind of dumb down or break down these really heavy concepts, right? So that your 11, 12, 13 through teenage years understands what we're talking about here.
Well, I don't break it down. You know, this leadership course that we do, we allow them to experience it.
Explain that, will you?
Yeah. Well, for instance, just let me give you, I love this exercise. That's why, because, you know, everybody gets something out of it, right? We take teenagers and we put them in a circle. And then we have one person taking notes, right, on a piece of paper, right? And then we pick one person, we say, Tom, now you sit there, right? And then we teach people how to acknowledge Tom, right? Like we pick something about Tom that is a standout for Tom, like Tom is this, and then explain why you said that to them, right? And we say, Tom, you can't say a word. You have to sit there and just be acknowledged. Then we go around and Sue acknowledges Tom and Bill, and then we go all around the circle and then we write down everything that was said on this piece of paper. All the while, this kid is squirming and crawling, can't hardly be in his seat, just like the rest of us on the planet can't be with somebody acknowledging and loving you and appreciating you and being really, truly with you. And then when that kid experiences that focused attention on him from his peers, he'll never forget that moment. And he starts to become someone who knows how to acknowledge somebody else.
That's what I was hearing in that as well. And the fact that we never hear it enough. We just don't. The confidence that grows in you when you hear this circle of 10 to 12 people saying things again about you that you can't see for yourself, it changes something in your brain, literally, doesn't it? That you can no longer not see those things.
That's right. And then we challenge them. Go out in the world and practice and come back next week and tell us how you did.
Love that. So then what's that exercise look like?
Well, go out and see if you see something you like about it, go compliment them.
And
Try
then they return to you and say what that compliment was
the
and what the
classroom
experience was.
Yeah, this is what I said and this is what I got. And they're lit up. They're lit up by the difference they could make just by acknowledging and complimenting somebody. They walk away feeling like a hero.
This is important for all of our leaders, whether you're new, emerging, tired, you've been in it for 50 years. This is a good exercise to keep in mind, not necessarily that you want to do it with all of your staff, but it highlights the fact that people need to be heard and people need to be appreciated. There is no more of the way I was quote unquote raised in corporate, which is you keep your personal life outside the door. Do as I say, not as I do, put your nose to the grindstone. If we don't start acknowledging the human holistically in our workplaces, then we cannot be surprised at continued disengagement and attrition, and this younger generation especially speaking up for themselves and saying, I'm not here to take this shit. I'm going to go somewhere else. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
How do you coach your leaders about that, about the humans that they are employing and asking the work from?
Well, here's the thing, just because we were, like you said, I was brought up into business, being ripped at, hollered at. I was brought up as a carpenter, being screamed at, hollered at, and I turned out. So of course I'm going to make the decision. That's how you create and
Mm-hmm.
build character and create new carpenters, right? You scream and holler at them and make them feel like an idiot all day, and they'll show up. No, that just happened over here with me because I had low self-esteem, and I needed it to have self-esteem, right? It doesn't happen for everybody, but I went out and started to be that guy in the world who was screaming and hollering, trying to create carpenters. And then I'm standing on a job site all by myself, wondering where everybody was. Because I said, everybody, we need a deadline here on Saturday. And I really got present to, I'm the one who created that because of something I made up from my past.
Yeah.
So I did a couple courses. I started to figure out who Greg was. I started to uncover. And I remember in 2002, I had this lightning bolt called, this is where you got to serve and provide value. And I called my whole crew off a site. Everybody, we had them on the front lawn of the site. I'll never forget this moment because I had why I never forget it, because I had a brand new Tahoe, right? It had 300 miles on it, brand spanking new. I mean, clean as a whistle, smelled new, everything else. My ego was, I had a sunlight for my fat head to stick out of, And then I called them all down on the site and I said, listen, you guys, I just want to apologize for being such a jerk. I want you to know that I really get the only reason there's any success in the company is because of you. And I promise to start to treat you that way moving forward. And I gave them all a raise, 15% raise across the board, and had health insurance for every one of them by the end of the week.
Unbelievable.
I started to trust them to build and be the human being that I knew they were, instead of looking for what's wrong with them. See, typically what I would do is I'd drive by the job on Tuesday, sit at the curb, spot everything that was wrong, point it all out to them, and then drive away.
And boy, that had to have felt very motivating.
Couldn't figure out why the jobs took forever, because they all went to lunch when Greg left. But after that, people started to show up and be responsible because they knew that I could see it. That's what I was looking for. So if you're having that anger and upset at work, what are you looking for? Am I looking for what's being done right and willing to acknowledge it? Or I'm going to walk in every morning because I'm so smart, want to be in control and point out where everybody else is doing wrong? And I had one of my clients share a story. He was one of the, he worked for Twitter, automotive sales, right? Fantastic guy. But he went to New York with another 85 people to sit down with the CEO of Twitter, and be acknowledged because of the world they were producing, right? And it was really funny because this guy is pretty self-motivator. He's producer out there and everything else. But he says, I couldn't believe it. He says, I can't think of the guy's name now, the CEO of Twitter at the time. He says he's walking into the room, walking by. He walks right over to me and asks me how my new dog is.
Wow.
He'll never forget that man, and he'll go to work for that man.
He will not only go to work for that man, he will go above and beyond for that man, and he will be loyal. There's a trust built there that you cannot break, because just like you did standing up in front of your employees, you became a man of integrity.
Exactly. And that guy will never be forgot. Why? Because all of a sudden he mattered. In a company with 4,000 people or 5,000 people, he was special.
I'd like to know how that CEO had how he remembered all those things.
Well, because listen, it's, why people remember things like that? Because it became very important to him.
To him.
That's right.
Of course.
And so he spent an hour a day or 2 hours a day researching people that worked for him on Twitter, so he could find out something special about him. Why? Because it became important to him that he was somebody who knew his team. So I want you to know, if you're not doing that, if you're not finding out who's working for you, then they're not important. They're just another number. Good luck getting them motivated.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah.
And to those who think that 2 hours a day was a waste of time, if you are willing to do a comparison, there's a word for it, I can't think of what it is, in how the yelling and the just do the job and I don't care, you're a number, impacts your bottom line compared to what you're going to see on that bottom line when you take those 2 hours. Your people are going to go do the work for you. You're not going to have to micromanage. You're not going to have to be at the job site. You're not going to have to look over their shoulders all the time.
Right. Start to look for what they're doing right instead of what they're doing wrong. And I learned that working with high school kids. Walk in and notice what they're doing right instead of notice what they're doing wrong.
It elevates a person immediately, doesn't it? Can't you see
well,
that
we always
physically?
had 2 or 3 kids in the background like this with hoods over their face and everything else. And I just walked up to them and treated them as perfect, whole, and complete, brilliant. And by the 3rd class, they got their hand up before anybody else because they wanted to share something. Why? Because they got the attention that they needed. They got acknowledged for who they are, and they showed up in my listening.
They showed up in your listening.
Because I listened to them great.
Because before that, of course, the hood is armor. The wall is armor. They expect people to just diss them, overlook them.
Get tough.
Yeah.
Why get tough? Because no one will call on me if I get tough.
Right.
People leave me alone because I'm actually scared to death.
I have missed you so much. I'm so glad that you came on this podcast, Greg. You have so much to offer your clients, those who are willing to work with you, both from a leadership standpoint, governance in the workplace, no matter what that role is, from a relationship standpoint. And I'm excited for the kids who get to meet with you. Are there any other final thoughts or tips that you'd want to leave us with today?
No, the one thing that I really got is, if I stop spending so much time beating myself up and getting into action, my life will change. My life will change for the better. So if I get up in the morning and I ask myself, okay, what's the next action to take today? Instead of how do I feel about it, miracles will happen.
And that is no exaggeration.
Yeah,
just miracles will happen.
Yeah, and I'm a walking miracle.
Folks, if you are in a place where you are stuck or you're hitting that fine line, or you just find yourself in survive and provide mode, like you said earlier, and it's time to inspire instead, please hear what Greg had to say today. Please reach out to him. And I would actually encourage you to go back and listen to this a second time, because there were so many salient and beautiful points that you shared with us today, Greg. So once again, look Greg up on LinkedIn and Facebook at Gregory Long, Results in Life Coach. And once again, Greg, thank you so much for your time today and sharing it.
It's so good to be with you. You're welcome. You're welcome.
All right. Until next time, folks, we'll see you.